When Chief Justice Roberts smirked and questioned whether Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was qualified to lecture the Supreme Court, he didn't realize he was seconds away from being dismantled in public, on record, and with the law itself. What followed wasn't just a defense, it was a masterclass. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of power, truth, and accountability. The room was silent. All eyes were locked on the long bench where the justices sat. Chief Justice John Roberts adjusted his glasses, then leaned slightly forward. His voice was calm, polished, the kind of tone that always sounds respectful on the surface but hides something else underneath. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had just finished her opening statement. Before the court, she had challenged the court's recent pattern of decisions, especially those affecting voting rights. Then Roberts spoke. "Congresswoman," he said, with a faint smile, "we appreciate your passion. But some might say that passion does not replace a legal education. Perhaps next time, we can bring in someone more experienced with constitutional law." You could feel it immediately. The whole room shifted. A cold breeze of tension swept through the chamber. Crockett's eyes locked onto his. She did not flinch. Camera zoomed in. A few audible gasps came from the gallery. Someone coughed nervously. The sound of a pen tapping echoed through the microphone. Roberts sat back, clearly thinking his moment had landed. But the silence that followed was not the end. It was the pause before the real beginning. Crockett did not say a word right away. She looked straight ahead, calm, composed. Her fingers traced the edge of her notes. Then she spoke. And what came next would change the tone of the entire hearing. "Before we go further, let us ask you something. Do you think experience or education makes someone a better judge of justice? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters here. Because this is not just about titles or degrees. This is about who actually understands the cost of the law and who uses it to protect the people, not control them." The night before the hearing, Jasmine Crockett sat at her desk in silence. Papers were spread around her like a battlefield. Legal briefs, past rulings, handwritten notes with red ink scribbled in the margins. The Capitol building stood in the distance, glowing under the heavy sky. She was not nervous. She was focused. Every question she would face tomorrow had already run through her mind. Every possible jab, every cold dismissal, every smirk from the bench. She knew what was coming. Jasmine was used to being underestimated. Before Congress, she had worked as a civil rights attorney. She defended people who could not afford anyone else. Before that, she was a public defender, walking into courtrooms with no power, but plenty of fire. Now, as a lawmaker, she still fought for the same thing: equal protection, fair access, real justice. That path did not come with applause. It came with scars. To some, she was just another freshman representative, not from the Ivy League, not part of the insider circle. In the halls of power, that still matters. They looked at her and saw someone who did not belong. What they did not see was how prepared she really was. This was not just another hearing. It was a test, not of her credentials, but of whether someone outside the club could walk into the most guarded room in America and speak the truth. She had every reason to walk in quietly, but Jasmine Crockett did not do quiet. She did not come to whisper. She came to challenge a system that protects itself too well. If you believe in holding power accountable, subscribe now. This is not just commentary. This is real confrontation. And you are about to witness what happens when someone refuses to back down. Chief Justice John Roberts has always played the long game. He is not loud. He is not flashy, but he is powerful. And in Washington, that kind of power often goes unnoticed until it is too late to stop. Roberts was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2005. From the start, he made it clear that he believed in something called judicial restraint. That sounds neutral. It sounds careful. But in practice, it often means stepping back when people need the court to step in. One of the biggest turning points came in 2013 with a case called Shelby County v. Holder. The court struck down a key part of the Voting Rights Act, that law used to protect voters in states with a history of discrimination. Roberts wrote the opinion that took it apart. He argued that times had changed, that we no longer needed those protections. But right after that decision, several states passed laws that made it harder to vote. The damage was done. Then came Citizens United. Roberts did not write the decision, but he backed it. The court ruled that corporations could spend unlimited money in elections, free speech, they said. But ever since then, Billionaires and big companies have had more influence than ever. The people trying to compete, they just got drowned out. There is a pattern here. When the choice is between a voter and a state, Roberts leans toward the state. When it is between a regular person and a corporation, he leans toward the corporation. And when someone challenges that pattern, like Jasmine Crockett just did, they usually get brushed aside. But Crockett and her team knew all of this going in. They had studied every decision, every footnote. They knew the tone Roberts used when he wanted to make someone feel small, and they were not afraid. This was never going to be a fair fight. Not on paper, but Crockett had come prepared for more than just a hearing. She came ready to expose the kind of thinking that keeps power locked away from the people who need it most. She was not just arguing policy. She was making a case for a different kind of justice, one where experience from the ground matters just as much as a fancy degree on the wall. Back in the courtroom, all eyes were still on Jasmine Crockett. The sting of Roberts' words was still fresh in the air, but she did not look shaken. She looked ready. She leaned into the microphone, calm and steady. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. "I may not wear a Harvard robe," she said, pausing, just long enough to let that land. "But I carry something you do not. I carry the voices of people this court often forgets, people who have been silenced, not by lack of passion, but by lack of access." A low murmur ran through the back of the chamber, not loud, but enough. She had the room now. Crockett kept going, not with anger, but with clarity. "I grew up in a place where voting was not easy, where showing up meant standing in line for hours, watching polling places close without warning, and being told your name was not on the list. I'd have lived what many only read about in legal briefs." There was no bitterness in her tone, just truth. "I became a public defender because I saw kids treated like criminals before they could even understand their rights. I became a civil rights attorney because the Constitution means nothing if it only protects the powerful. And now, as a legislator, I bring the same fight into these halls." She stopped for a breath, not to gather herself, but to let the words sink in. "So if credentials are the standard, then yes, I am proud to say I bring something different. I bring experience that comes from outside the marble walls, the kind you cannot earn in a classroom." The room was quiet now, not because no one cared, but because everyone was listening. Even Robert sat still. Crockett looked directly at him, not with defiance, but with resolve. "Justice is not a theory. It is a lived reality for millions of Americans. And I did not come here for applause. I came here to remind you that the people are watching, and they deserve better." No one moved. No one spoke, because in that moment, the courtroom was no longer his. It belonged to her. Jasmine Crockett did not just stop at her story. She pivoted, and this time, she was not speaking as a witness. She was speaking as a lawyer, as someone who had studied the law inside and out, and knew exactly where to aim. She looked squarely at the bench. "Let us talk about precedent," she said. "Let us talk about how this court has shaped the world outside this building." Her tone sharpened, not loud, but exact. Every word chosen, every line placed with purpose. "In Shelby County v. Holder, this court decided that protections from the Voting Rights Act were no longer necessary. You said the country had changed. You said discrimination was in the past. But immediately after that ruling, states started closing polling places. They passed strict ID laws. They cut early voting. And who felt it the most? Black and brown voters, young voters, poor voters." A few heads in the gallery nodded slowly. Crockett pressed on. "Then came Brnovich v. DNC. You said that voting laws, even ones that clearly created barriers, were fine as long as they seemed reasonable. So Arizona got to throw out ballots just because someone dropped them off for a neighbor. And, again, that hit communities of color hardest." She paused and let the courtroom sit with that. "You called that equal justice. I call it targeted suppression." Now her voice grew tighter, more deliberate. "This Constitution, the one I swore to protect, starts with the words, 'We the people.' Not we the powerful, not we the privileged. It does not say, 'We the ones who went to the right schools.'" She reached for her folder and held up a highlighted page. Section 2 of the 15th Amendment reads, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude." She looked up, and yet this court continues to find ways to narrow that protection, to chip away at what was already a fragile promise. The room fell into silence again, not out of shock this time, but respect. Every time you decide these cases, she continued, you make a choice. You choose whether that promise gets stronger or weaker, and the truth is, you have been choosing. Wrong. Crockett's voice was steady now, measured, like she was closing arguments in front of a jury that mattered more than just the 9 in front of her. You are not supposed to bend the law to award power. You are supposed to protect those with the least of it. She closed her binder and set it down softly. That is what justice is. And if this court has forgotten that, then maybe it is time someone reminded you. No one interrupted, not Roberts, not the clerks, not the crowd, because in that moment, the silence said everything. Crockett took a breath, then she shifted. This was no longer just legal argument. This was something deeper. This was lived truth. She looked at the room and spoke from the heart. You say these rulings are about balance, about preserving tradition, but let me tell you what tradition really looks like where I come from. Her voice lowered slightly. It looked like an 83-year-old woman standing in line for 4 hours, just to cast a vote, because her polling place closed after the Shelby decision. It looked like a college student turned away because their campus address does not match their driver's license. It looks like a man in a wheelchair who cannot reach the only entrance open on election day. Because the ramp was locked and the staff did not know the key code, she let that sit. These are not hypotheticals. These are people I know, people I have defended, people who still believe their voice matters, even when the system keeps telling them it does not. The courtroom began to shift. Even the stone-faced staffers at the back leaned forward. This was not just a critique, it was a call-out. Every time this court makes a ruling that chips away at protections, someone out there loses their right, and most of the time, they do not even know it, because by the time they realize, the damage is already done. Crockett looked at the justices. This is not theory, this is trauma. And while we sit in this marble room with perfect air conditioning and polished floors, real people are paying the price. She paused, then added with weight, you get to write history from behind a bench, but they live it every day at a locked polling booth in a shut-down precinct, on a ballot that never got counted. Something changed in that moment. The murmurs were gone. The courtroom was still. Even the skeptical expressions had softened, because truth has a way of cutting through everything else. Crockett was not just winning the argument. She was winning the room. Chief Justice Roberts leaned forward. His voice was measured. Trying to sound in control, he made a procedural comment, something about time limits and maintaining decorum. On paper, it sounded official, but in the room, it came off as defensive. He was not addressing the argument. He was trying to regain footing. Crockett did not flinch. She stayed calm. Her eyes stayed locked on him, steady and direct. Then she did something no one expected. She quoted his own words. In your opinion in Shelby County, you wrote, and I quote, things have changed in the South. She paused, letting that line breathe. Things have changed. But changed for who? Now the room was quiet again. No side conversations. No rustling papers. Just her voice. You used that line to justify striking down protections for black voters. You used it to say racism had faded. But ask the people who were turned away last election. Ask the students, the seniors, the workers who cannot get off their shift to vote. Ask them if things have really changed. Roberts blinked, his hands folded, then refolded. He knew what was coming, but he had no place to go. You used that line to pull the rug out from under us. Today, I am laying it back down, because those protections were never a luxury. They were a promise. She stood tall, still calm, still controlled, but the message was loud this time. Roberts was the one left silent. Crockett stood tall, her voice even, but filled with conviction. This is not judicial review, it is judicial revision. The words hit like a drum, not shouted, but firm and clear. You are not interpreting the Constitution. You are rewriting its promises to fit a new agenda. The weight of the moment shifted. She was not just speaking to the bench anymore. She was speaking to the room, to the country, to anyone who had ever wondered why their voice did not count. For years, decisions under your leadership have chipped away at voting rights, labor protections, reproductive freedom, all while claiming to stay neutral. She turned slightly, eyes now on the press box, on the cameras. But neutrality that always favors the powerful is not neutrality. It is policy in disguise. And the people see it. Roberts tried to hold his composure, but there was movement. In his hands, he reached for a pen he did not need, shifted in his chair, looked to the clerk. He was rattled. Crockett did not gloat. She delivered the final blow with quiet certainty. The law should serve the people, not rule over them. Someone in the back clapped, then another, and another, until the room stirred with energy. Court staff tried to settle it down, but the moment was alive. The cameras locked on Roberts. His face said it all. No words, just silence. Crockett had come into the room underestimated. While she left, it changed, and so did everyone watching. Within hours, the clip exploded across the internet. It started with a few retweets, a couple of legal scholars sharing the moment with a single line, "You need to watch this." Then it spread fast. Civil rights lawyers, students, journalists, people from every corner of the political spectrum were talking about it. By midday, hashtags were trending. Hashtag Crockett vs. Roberts. Hashtag legal masterclass. Hashtag accountability in action. News outlets ran headlines that felt more like history than news. The day a Congresswoman scolded the Supreme Court. Roberts left speechless. Crockett redefines the rules. Clips were playing on TV news panels. Law professors were breaking it down on live streams. High school civics teachers were playing it in class. It was not just a viral moment. It was a cultural shift. People saw themselves in Crockett, in her voice, in her story, in her refusal to be silenced by power dressed in tradition. She had walked into one of the most intimidating rooms in American government and flipped the script. This was not about one argument or one courtroom exchange. It was about a bigger question. Who gets to define justice? And who gets to speak when justice has gone silent? By nightfall, Crockett was everywhere. Interview requests piled up. Commentators called it one of the boldest legal confrontations of the decade. But for Crockett, it was not about fame. It was about truth, about using the law to fight for people who rarely get a seat at the table. And in that moment, she became more than a congresswoman. She became a symbol of what accountability really looks like. This moment was powerful, but it was never just about Jasmine Crockett. It was about all of us, our vote, our voice, our future, because the decisions made in courtrooms like that one do not stay in law books. They shape our daily lives. They decide who gets to vote without barriers, who can access health care, what our children learn in school, which communities get protected, and which get ignored. This hearing pulled back the curtain. It showed how power can wear a robe and call itself neutral, while undoing the rights generations fought to secure. And if we stay quiet, if we let it slide, it does not stop there. It rolls back more. The court has the power to reverse decades of progress if no one stands up to it. Crockett showed what it looks like when someone does. But the truth is, this fight is not hers alone. It belongs to every citizen who wants to be seen, heard, and counted. It belongs to anyone who believes democracy should mean something real. So the next time someone says the courts do not matter, remember this hearing. Remember how fast things can change when the right questions get asked by the right person in the right room. And remember, that person could be you. Your voice matters. Your vote matters. And this moment is just the beginning. Was Jasmine Crockett right to confront Chief Justice Roberts? Do you think the Supreme Court should have term limits? We want to hear from you in the comments. So share your thoughts, like the video, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this one. Your voice matters more than ever, especially when powerful voices try to shut down accountability. And do not miss the next one. You will not believe what happened when Clarence Thomas got confronted on camera. It changes everything.